folks. In the wake of this novel coronavirus or COVID-19 that has spread throughout the world, I decided to share a very personal journey of healing that you might find useful to stay healthy and resist the disease in these turbulent times of uncertainty. So, I've never had serious health challenges, but when I was in university, I had broken my back. Actually, I was diagnosed with prolapsed intervertebral discs in my lower spine, and I used to be a very athletic, agile person. I loved dancing and anything to do with movement. And when this happened during my university days, I found myself unable to even move without feeling extreme pain. And everyday chores like bending forward to wear my pants, opening heavy doors, climbing stairs, running on hard ground, things, sitting in a chair for a long time had become so painful for me that I was not able to carry out a normal life. And I suffered like that for 3 years. I used to study in Singapore, so I was alone in a foreign country on a scholarship, and I spent all my scholarship money at the university hospital doing physiotherapy. And there were all these kind of technologies, ultrasound, laser therapy, and electric current therapy, hot and cold therapy, and they used to give me all these different types of therapies, but nothing that they did could alleviate my pain. There were times I felt that a butcher was slicing through my back, cutting me like meat, and the pain would trickle down into my legs, making them numb, and I couldn't even, move. So during those times, I used to be alone, find myself alone in my hostel room, crying or staring at the wall and wondering what use my life is, And so many days I remember I thought of taking my own life, of committing suicide, because I did not know how else to live. And the doctors had given me their death sentence that, this situation that I had was permanent and there was no cure for it. And I had to live like that for the rest of my life. I had put on so much weight and, I could not eat proper food because anything that I ate made me fat because I was not able to exercise. And it was a very painful, traumatic situation, not just physical pain, but also mental pain. And in those days, I tried to, escape reality. I used to skip my classes, I used to skip my exams sometimes, with the excuse of my back pain, and sleep all day, all night, because I wanted to escape reality. So anyways, to cut the long story short, I was suffering like that for nearly 3 years, until one night I was like, I've had enough. I can't live like this anymore. And I remember I was sleeping in my hostel room, in my bed. It was like midnight. And suddenly I had a strange thought. I got up from my bed. I took all the medicines, the painkillers, the ugly pair of Dr. Scholl's shoes, which I had to wear because I couldn't wear any fancy shoes because of my back. This thick belt that I had to wear around my back at all times to support my body. I took all of that and I threw them in the dustbin outside my hostel room. Then I wore my sports shoes and I went outside. And my hostel was just in front of the racing tracks of the university. So it was midnight, moonless night. I could only see the stars. And I walked into the tracks, and then I looked up and I told God, I said, if tonight I become a vegetable, it's okay, but I cannot live like this anymore. And after that, I started sprinting. I started running so fast and I was mindless. I was running all alone with the stars in the middle of the night in the tracks. And I didn't care what happened to me that night. I was so desperate that I had nothing to lose. So I was running, and when I stopped, I didn't feel like I was in my body because I felt no pain. I thought my back would have been permanently damaged, but to my surprise, my back wasn't hurting at all. And I returned to my hostel room, and when I saw the time, I realized that I was running alone, sprinting for nearly 2 hours. That night, a new me was born. And I am sharing this story because I realized this mind-body connection, which is so powerful that it can do miracles. It can shirk any disease just by the power of your mind. And that night I was completely healed, completely. And after that, every night I used to go out alone in the middle of the night to run, with nobody around me. And I found that process so healing, so meditative. And I used to run for long hours. And within 10 days, I had lost more than 10 kilos. I had become thin, and people all around me, they were like, what happened to you? Are you okay? Like, people couldn't believe the transformation that was happening to me. After that, I left Singapore. I traveled the whole world. I lived in different continents of the planet for many years. I went backpacking with heavy loads. I hiked up mountains. I trekked for days, I climbed down waterfalls, did extreme sports, started dancing again, started wearing heels, dancing in heels, and my back has never complained since then. Can you imagine the power of what happened that night? At the time, I didn't know how to explain it. So I called it a miracle, a personal miracle, spontaneous healing. But now I know that it was not miracle, it was epigenetics. Epigenetics is defined by the fact that you are not at the behest of your genes. You may be predisposed to certain illnesses, but that doesn't mean that you will get them. It depends on how you live your life and where you live. Usually cultural and environmental factors are far stronger than genetics. So, I was in this highly stressed environment of Singapore, very competitive, first world developed country, and I was a foreign scholar. There were so much that I had to do. There were so many expectations from me to get good grades. My academics should not fall below a certain level. And all these things, how people were continuing this mad race, and I just felt that I was not cut out for that kind of life. I lived 6 years in Singapore, and at the end of it, I felt that, another 6 months in the country and my soul would die. So it was in that situation, when I felt that I had to leave. And when I graduated, I gave up a normal, regular job, a high-paying job for a computer graduate, and I went to Africa because I wanted to find my soul. I wanted to figure out who I was, why I came here on the planet, what is my purpose, what is my passion. I didn't know any of it. I was in a wrong career, I didn't like computing. I was intelligent, I was brilliant, I had aptitude for it, but no interest. And lack of interest in the subject made me suffer, and I wasn't able to change career because I was on a scholarship. So I stuck with that computing subject for 4 years at university, and I suffered, and I'm sure that is what led to this back accident, back injury that I had, because I was just not happy. And when your internal mind is not happy, when you are not doing what you came here to do, you are highly prone to diseases, to accidents, injuries, infections, and things like that, because diseases are not your enemy, they are your messenger. Any disorder or illness, they are telling you what is misaligned within yourself. When we are born into this world, we are told so many things by our parents, teachers, neighbors, grandparents, guardians, people who we trust, people with our survival, they tell us this is how you should live your life, go to school, go to college, get a job, get married, have children, then you fall sick, so have life insurance, health insurance, so they can pay your medical bills, and then one day you get old and you die. That's all there is to life. I used to always question, I'm like, is that how my life is going to be? I didn't come here to live that life, I have to figure out what I came here to do and do that, because that is when I will feel the most alive, the adventure of being alive. To be here on this planet, it's just not enough to exist. We have to live. We have to thrive. It's not enough to make a living. We have to make a life. And that is why, right now, I feel that this coronavirus, COVID-19, is kind of a mass reflection of human consciousness, because people are unhappy. I have literally lived in 5 continents of this world, not for a few days, but for years. And I have been in interaction with people from all disciplines, all belief systems, all religions, all cultures, all traditions, all lifestyles, and I have noticed this common experience of humanity, that most people, they are not doing what they absolutely love. They are, just trying to survive through life, trying to pay the bills, and they have these expensive lifestyles, mostly to show off to other people, have a big house, have a flashy car, have, all these materialistic things that are actually, taking them away from who they really are. Because imagine, get that big house, and then the maintenance of that house. You have to clean it, you have to pay its bills, you have to refurbish it, you know, occasionally you have to furnish it, you have to make everything in the house look good. And imagine how much financial drain that is to your pocket. And this is what we are told in society, you know, get a great job, high-paying job, get a big house, get a flashy car, you know, that is a measurement of our success. And then people become a slave to this house, you know, they become a slave to that car. And the moment they enter into the four walls of the house, the adventure of life ends. You know, the rest of your life you are just spending to take care of the house, to maintain the house. You cannot even travel for long periods, especially, you know, in not so safe places, because someone can enter your house and steal things, you know. So, or you have to keep a guard and all these things. So people are bogged down by the burden of these things that they accumulate, and then one day everybody has to die. And at your deathbed you think, how did I live my life? A slave to my house, a slave to my car, just to show off to other people who don't care, you know. People buy things that they don't need. People do things they don't want to impress people who they don't like, you know. So I am sharing this because I felt when this thing happened, you know, this virus outbreak and the whole world kind of shutting down, I felt the world at large, the way it is functioning, is just not healthy for most people that live in it. And that it takes this disease to tell us that. I will share another health incident that happened with me. So during all these years that I was traveling, that I was on the road, eating shit, you know, sometimes I didn't have money to eat, you know, I would go for days without food, but I was living the good life, fighting the good fight, because I was at least following my passions, my dreams, you know, or even figuring out what my passions were. For many years I was just confused. I didn't even know what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be. And you know, I was just traveling the world, working in small places, earning very little money, and with that money I would travel again. So this kept happening for many years until I published my first book, you know, and then I became a speaker, a writer, a performer, and I realized, you know, that expression, self-expression, expression of my soul. I didn't know how to write, I didn't know how to dance, I didn't know how to speak, but time and my experiences taught me to come out in public and express all these things. And today I'm sharing this with you, perhaps to inspire you to find your passion and your purpose and your creative gifts, why you came here. It is very easy to just die or to get sick, then go to a doctor and you know, take a lot of medicines. But it is very difficult to live a life of passion and purpose, of inner vision. So coming back to the health perspective again, I remember I was visiting India after a long time. So I don't live in India, and it was, I think, almost 5 years that, you know, I hadn't been to India. And this time my parents were retired, so before, whenever I visited India from my university in Singapore, I used to visit them in Delhi, the capital. but this time they moved back to Calcutta after my dad's retirement, and I went to visit them in Calcutta. And I was 12 years old when I left Calcutta, and I was visiting Calcutta after a long time, and I went there initially planning to spend about 2 months in India and then come back. But when I got there, I got very sick. Now, before this happened, this was back in 2016. All these years that I traveled, I developed a very strong immunity, to the extent that I felt that I can never get sick again. During all those years, I never felt the need to go to a doctor. After my back was healed magically, miraculously, spontaneously, whatever you say, I never went to a doctor. Also because I couldn't afford healthcare. I feel many people, they get these health insurances, and they spend so much money on healthcare that they don't actually take the efforts to listen to their bodies, to tune in to what their bodies are telling them. Because if you develop body intuition, if you know your body cannot deceive you suddenly with a disease. Even the most difficult diseases like cancer and diabetes, heart disease, every disease has a message for you and how you are living your life. If you tune into that, your body, and listen to the answer, you will know why it happened, and you can heal it naturally by yourself. But most people don't take the time to do that because their whole life experience comes from the external world. First, it is all about the outside, and then it is about the inside. But it doesn't work like that. It comes from the inside. If your internal world is happy, or even if you are not happy, at least if you are content that you are living the life that you want, that is not dictated by somebody else, you will be tuned to your body. So your body cannot just surprise you. So I was in India, in Calcutta, and suddenly I developed very strong cough. And I was coughing and coughing and coughing, and with the cough I found myself unable to breathe. So let me just go back a little bit so you understand the context, the perspective of this. When I was a child, I was born in Calcutta. I used to be sick all the time. I had bronchitis, which is cough, a lot of cough, and until the age of 10, 11, 12, until we left Calcutta, I used to be sick all the time. I used to cough and cough and cough, and it was so painful. And my parents used to take me to all these doctors and physiotherapy and medicines, and nothing seemed to be able to heal that cough. Then when I left Calcutta, my dad got transferred to the south, to Chennai. It went away by its own. Now, as an adult me, after all these years, I went back to Calcutta and I developed that bronchitis again. And this time, it was worse because sorry, I just, got so excited. So this time it was worse because the bronchitis was accompanied with asthma. So I was not just coughing like a maniac, that extremely painful, continuous dry cough, but I was unable to breathe. I felt like my lungs were shrinking and I wasn't able to take a breath properly. And after all these years, I felt like I knew my body. My body couldn't deceive me. I could not fall sick. And here I was with asthma. literally feeling suffocation. And I was doing a dance show in Calcutta, based on my first book, magicNine, and I was going to my dance classes, and something particularly happened which I would like to share is that before I went to India, I lived in Costa Rica, and I met this guy from the US, from America. He was a very special person because he had ADHD. He was an indigo soul, and we met at a car rental here in Costa Rica, and he saw that I spoke very good Spanish, and he asked me if I would work for him because he was expanding his business to Latin America. And I said, yeah, why not? Because, I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And we started a tourism business. Like we were going to start a tourism business here in Costa Rica. And we started creating this website and everything, And then I had to leave Costa Rica. Certain tragic things happened. My house got robbed. My landlord died. I suddenly became homeless, So anyways, cut the long story short, I went to New York for a few months. Then I went to India, Calcutta, because my dad said, just come and visit us. You haven't visited us in a long time. So I went to India, to Calcutta, and I was going to stay there for 2 months. But I got stuck in India for 2 years and 2 months. So one day I was in Calcutta and I was looking for a place to run. Now I love running. I do a lot of marathons. I always, try to run, exercise, jog long hours. Since those university days when my back got healed and I was running every night for 2 hours, then that became normal. Like even when I lived in other countries, especially when I was in Venezuela, South America, Costa Rica, I used to, whenever I would find time, I would run for hours. It was for me like a meditative process, connecting with myself, with my intuition, with my inner inspiration and things like that. So I was in Calcutta and I felt so suffocated there, like there was not enough space, and where we lived in Salt Lake, there were no open big spaces to run. So one day my mom told me there was a lake near our house and if I would like to go and check out that place. So I said, okay, let's go there. And I was walking with my mom to the lake. It was in the evening in winter, and suddenly this butterfly came and sat on my shoulder. It was a black butterfly, and it was so strange because I lived in Costa Rica for so many years, and Costa Rica is the country of butterflies, and I've never had a butterfly come and sit on my shoulder. And here I was in Calcutta, winter evening, when you can't even expect butterflies around. This butterfly came and sat on my shoulder, and I showed it to my mom. Look, butterfly, and immediately my mom was like, oh, that means you will get married soon, because Indian parents, they're always trying to get their daughters married. But in that moment, my first thought was, who died? I didn't know, there was no rational reason or logic behind that thought, but I, had this thing in my mind that if a black butterfly has come to me, then someone is dead and trying to communicate with me. Well, 2 days later, I found out this American guy with whom I was working in Costa Rica, he died. And maybe his last thoughts were about me, or maybe he had some unfinished business which he, wanted to communicate with me. this butterfly, you know, later I found out it was that, but he was visiting me through this butterfly because I remember the next day I was going for my dance class. So I was, you know, in a local choreographer's place, preparing for this big dance show that I wanted to do based on my book. I was going for my dance class, you know, and in my mind, I told him that if it was you the other day who came and sat on my shoulder when me and my mom were walking to the lake, then come to me again today as a sign, so I know it is you. And you know, our dance uniform was like black t-shirt and black tights. So, you know, I wore black t-shirt, black tights, and then I saw this white shirt on my bed, which had a huge hand-painted butterfly drawn on it. And below that was written the word freedom. So I changed the black shirt and I wore the white shirt that day to my dance class because I wanted to feel this spirit of the butterfly. So, you know, I forgot about my prayer, you know. I went with my mom to my dance teacher's place, you know. And this was in a condominium, like 3rd floor. And we had to take the lift to go to his house. And it was winters in Calcutta. And if you know anything about Calcutta, it is full of mosquitoes during the winter time. So, all the windows and doors are usually shut, closed before evening. So same it was at my dance teacher's house, all doors and windows were shut. You know, but when I left the elevator with my mom and entered his house, immediately I saw that same colored butterfly was sitting on the floor, dance floor. And I immediately showed it to my mom, you know, I said, Mom, look, that's my friend. And you know, my mom was kind of like, she's crazy, you know, even my dance teachers thought I was crazy. But that very day, like just a few minutes ago, I told him, if it was you, come to me, you know. And he was so young, he just turned 30 that year. You know, and he died at the age of 30, you know, and he had tattoos on his 2 arms. On one arm was called forever, in the other arm was called young, like forever young, you know, and literally he died at 30, you know, he died so young. I saw the butterfly, I knew it was him that had come to visit me. And then after some time, the butterfly started flying around the room, and then it came and sat on my shoulder again for the 2nd time. And this time I wanted proof. So I told my mom to take a picture. And she had this iPad, not an iPad, it's a HP pad kind of a thing. And she used to take videos of all my dance rehearsals. She had the habit of doing that. So she took out her phone and she clicked that phone twice, thinking she took 2 pictures. But actually her phone was in video mode. So it was like a 6-second video that she took of me with the butterfly. So I actually have a video, not a picture. So, you know, people cannot say that it's a Photoshop or something like that, you know. And it's funny because, you know, when I published my first book, like 2 years before that, you know, I have this picture of me in a beach in Costa Rica. One of my friends took that picture, which I used on the book cover. And I asked the graphic designer to Photoshop a butterfly on my shoulder. So if you see my book cover, you will see this blue butterfly which is sitting on my shoulder, and that's photoshopped, you know, that's for the book cover. But here I was in Calcutta after 2 years since I published the book, and this real butterfly was sitting on my shoulder. So the butterfly was there throughout that evening that we had the dance practice. There were other girls that came for the dance because it was like a group performance. I was the lead dancer, but you know, we were like a group of 9 to 10 girls. And the butterfly was there throughout the evening, and I noticed, because you know, my eyes were on the butterfly because I believe in these signs and synchronicities of the universe. So I was seeing the butterfly, and after some time, like towards the end of the class, the butterfly was gone. I don't know where it went. All doors, windows were closed. It disappeared as magically as it had appeared. So that night, when I came back home, I asked him, like in my mind, you know, I was like, how did you die? Tell me, how did you die? I want to know, because his death was a mystery. Nobody knew how he died, you know, and autopsies were going on. I was trying to find out through Facebook and social media, you know, but I couldn't get the answer. So that same night, I came down with these coughs that I was talking about, and breathlessness, like literally when I would sleep at night, you know, with your chest flattened, I felt that I couldn't breathe. So I would spend all night sitting, and this was in December 2016, and my dance show was postponed to January 2017 because I was sick. But you know, I had planned to leave India by the end of January, so I had to do the dance show. So I did the dance show with that breathing trouble, with that asthma. I had to learn 9 dances for my magicNine book show, you know. And it was a great time, but at the same time I was very sick. With that asthma, you know, I was taking these inhalers, which are like steroids, you know, that again made me quite bloated up. And 2 days after the dance class, dance show, I had to be hospitalized because I remember it was the middle of the night. I refused to believe that I had to go to a doctor, you know, I refused. Of course, during this whole December and January, I was going to doctors, you know. I went, when my mom took me to the doctor's clinic, I saw the butterfly in the doctor's chamber. We were in a polyclinic with many chambers of doctors, you know, and the doctor that was seeing me, the butterfly was sitting on the light in the doctor's clinic. Then we went to the pharmacy, and the butterfly was in the sitting on the light in the pharmacy. You know, this was in the evening, winter, night. Again, very strange for butterflies to be there. It was the same colored butterfly, you know. I wish I had taken pictures of all those butterflies, but you know, I didn't go to the doctor with my cell phone. Here I was, you know, not able to breathe. Only my mom would take videos of my dance shows, dance rehearsals, you know. So the next day, like when I came from the doctor's house, I was in my room, in the house, in our Calcutta house. This is the same house where I grew up, and the butterfly was in my room. So I knew he was trying to contact me, you know. So I had to find a medium to channel him to see what he wanted to say. But I found the medium much later. So this was in January 2017, you know. That night I was so breathless. I almost had no oxygen in my body, you know, and these inhalers that the doctors had prescribed me, they were just not working, you know. And I asked the doctors, like, do I have a congestion in my lungs? And the doctors were like, yeah, you know, they were not even that great doctors. So that night, I felt the spirit of this guy was in the room, and through this intuition, it was communicated to me that if you don't go to the hospital tonight, you will meet the same fate as I did. You know, I felt this guy was telling me, my dead friend. So I started crying because I didn't know what to do. And my dad heard me from the next room and he rushed me to the hospital, my mom and dad, and I wasn't even able to go down the stairs because I was so breathless. I felt before the car would reach the hospital, I would die, you know, but I survived. They immediately put me under oxygen. 3 days I was in the hospital, and I had a very strange experience in the hospital, and I want to tell you this because this is related to this health and this coronavirus and everything. I went a bit off the topic telling you the story of this dead guy and all that, but let me come back to the health aspect of it. So I was in the hospital. They gave me these nebulizers to open my lungs because my lungs, you know, the airways were so inflated that, you know, there was no space for air to go in. And at night they put me in oxygen, you know, and I didn't want to sleep with the oxygen tubes in my nose. So I removed it. You know, then in the middle of the night, the nurse came to my ward, and the nurse was like, ma'am, you are here for respiratory illness, so you have to sleep with the oxygen in your body. So, you know, I slept with the pipes in my nose, and I was wondering why I got so sick after all these years of great health and everything, you know. So I was sitting in the hospital the next day, you know, I asked my doctor, my nurse, to give me a pen and paper because I didn't have anything, and I started writing. I started writing a story which was inspired, you know, and I was also having dreams and visions of this friend of mine who had died. And that, what I wrote, became a book. It's called Nrit, The Dream of Finding the Self, which is going to be published very soon. And I am also planning to turn it into a film. But apart from that, so I was in the hospital and after being under oxygen, you know, for like a couple of days, my oxygen level was just 90, like, you know, for an average healthy human being, you should have like 99, 100, you know, and if you have below 90, you need to take oxygen. So really my oxygen levels were very low, and if I hadn't gone to the hospital that night, I probably would have died. So when I was in the hospital, like for 3 days, I was in one of the biggest hospitals of Calcutta, Apollo Hospital, in the emergency ward for respiratory disorder, you know, and the doctor that was assigned to me, she would come in the morning for like 5 seconds. What, have you done this test? Have you done that test? You know, and she would write a list of tests for me to do. And you know, in 3 days, I did like 100 tests, and all tests were negative. They would just make us do tests after tests after tests, and in 3 days, they billed us like 50,000 rupees, more than that, you know. And I was so angry because in those 3 days, I didn't get a chance to see my doctor for 3 minutes. And at the end of the 3 days, you know, the doctor had billed this huge prescription, and I was fidgety, like in the hospital, you know, I didn't want to stay there. And eventually the doctor told me, like, you know, I'm giving you all these medicines, you have all these medicines, and you don't need to stay here because, you know, this place is not good for you. So anyways, when I was discharged from the hospital, I was so angry with this doctor and this secretary of the doctor. They would just come, prescribe all these tests and go away. You know, the doctor never took 2 minutes to sit with me and find out what was actually troubling me. So I tried to fight with the doctor, you know, and the doctor was angry that I was questioning her, you know, and she told me that, you know, it was my daughter's birthday yesterday. You should be lucky that I even came to see you, you know. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm paying ₹500,000 and I have been assigned a doctor in emergency ward who is telling me that she is doing me a favor by even coming to see me because she missed her daughter's birthday. I mean, why was she even assigned to me? You know, they could have assigned a doctor who had time for me, you know. Anyways, there were other patients there who were equally neglected, but you know, they were there for a long time, so they were kind of used to that treatment. But I'm not used to India, I'm not used to Calcutta. I left India when I was 17, you know. I found this hospital highly corrupted. These doctors were just bullshitters, you know. They were so frustrating, you know. And in that moment, you know, I didn't want to fight with the doctor because I thought she could give me a medicine or she could give me something that could permanently damage my health, you know, and in the end I would be the one suffering. So anyways, I left the hospital, you know, and I remember there was this one day, this assistant of the doctor came. It was in the morning in the hospital. I had just had breakfast, you know, and for breakfast they gave me bread and jam, like sweet jam. And a few minutes after the breakfast, they came and took my blood, you know, and then that assistant came and told me, I have bad news for you, like that evening. And I was like, what do you mean bad news? Then he said, you have blood sugar, high blood sugar. And I was like, impossible, I cannot have blood sugar. And you know, I said that because I know my body, I know where I'm coming from, you know, and even though I had gotten sick, I couldn't have diabetes. So I told the doctor, like, you took my blood a few minutes after breakfast and I had bread and jam for breakfast, and you are coming and telling me I have high blood sugar. Take my blood tomorrow morning before breakfast and then tell me that I have sugar. So, you know, he said, sure, we'll do that. And the next day they came and took my blood again before breakfast, and he came back to me and he said, good news, you don't have sugar, you know. And I was laughing because it seemed like I knew more than these doctors knew. And you know, I'm saying this today with a lot of pride because having lived by myself all these years in all these dangerous and difficult countries like Nigeria, Venezuela, Costa Rica, you know, people get robbed there, murdered there. They're like very difficult places to live, you know, and I had to take care of myself, you know. I couldn't afford to go to doctors. I couldn't afford health insurance. With $200 a month, what can you get, you know? So anyways, I was in India after all this time, you know, and I was sick. And my doctor told me I couldn't travel, and really I didn't feel like, you know, I could travel. So I got stuck there for 2 years. When I came out of the hospital, I was taking all these medicines, these inhalers, steroids, you know. And again, I started connecting with my body intuition and everything. And something told me, like, stop taking these medicines. They are not good for you. You know, those steroids, they can harm your kidneys, your internal organs and stuff like that. But I was so breathless, I didn't want to get so badly sick again. Eventually they said I had dust allergy because all the tests they took were negative, and they said the reason I was so breathless because I was allergic to dust. But come on, I've lived in Africa, I've lived in the world's dirtiest places, you know, and I never had something like that. But yeah, I am apparently allergic to dust. So what I figured out from this experience is that, you know, I come from a family of a lot of ancestral dysfunction, dysfunctional relationships. I've seen my grandmothers, you know, how they have lived their lives. When I went to Calcutta after all these years, I literally felt suffocated. You know, the extreme patriarchal rule in the country or even in the city, the way they expect women to be, what we should wear, how we should behave, how we should be. It's like everything is defined for us, for women, but nothing is defined for the men. You know, somehow the men think that it is their right to direct and control what a woman should do, what a woman should say, what a woman should wear, how a woman should be, you know, everything, at what age she should get married, you know, all these belief systems, these patriarchal systems were so constricting for me that, you know, and I was there, you know, I lived in Latin America for so many years, and women here in Latin America are so free. They wear what they want. The maidservant in my house comes in more sexy clothes than what I wear for, you know, my work or my videos. So I felt this constriction, you know. I had made some videos on my YouTube channel, sari tutorials, because, you know, I did some dances here in Costa Rica and people started asking me, how did you drape the sari? And I got, you know, a lot of requests to make sari tutorials, and I was doing that, you know, and I never thought there is something shameful about my body, that I should hide my stomach, you know, all these things that are there in India, and those videos were being seen by Indians. So a lot of people started writing like, you know, why are you exposing so much? Why are you taking a video on the terrace? Why, you know, is this, it never even occurred to me that this is something that I should not do because I was born a woman and not a man. You know, I'm very spiritual and I know that the soul has no gender. You can choose to be born as a man or as a woman, and we come here on earth to have an experience of ourselves, to self-actualize. You know, it doesn't matter what gender you are, what clothes you wear. You are here for a purpose, for a reason, and you are here to know yourself in experience, who you are, what you are capable of, you know, to experience the divinity within you, the creator within you, you know, and there is no room for all these shitty belief systems. So, but being exposed to that Calcutta environment after all these years and feeling this pressure from the outside world, where all these, you know, neighbors, people were talking, why aren't you married yet? Why you didn't do this? Why you didn't do that? You know, it was literally suffocating me from outside, and that's why I became a vibrational match to that asthma. You know, and definitely the doctors could not figure that out because that doctor did not even have time to sit with me and talk with me. What I realized was happening was all my childhood trauma, like, you know, the spiritual, emotional reason for bronchitis is when there is too much stress, argument and fights in the domestic environment. So children who get bronchitis or asthma is because their parents are stressed all the time. And that's exactly was the case with me. You know, as a child, my parents were always stressed, they were always fighting, and not just my parents, my whole lineage of relatives, my dad's side, my mom's side, I have only seen dysfunctional relationships and a lot of pain and fights and violence and struggles. So, you know, after all these years that I was escaping my past, I was, you know, trying to run away from that pain, from that trauma. And after all these years, when I went back to Calcutta, I had to face my shadows and transcend them, transmute them, because if I'm running away from them, then I can never be truly happy, the person that I am. So I realized that through this asthma, like my childhood trauma and pain was coming back, revisiting me, so I could deal with them, and face them and bring them to my conscious awareness and release them, heal them and release them. Only then they could go away. And I feel through the death of this friend of mine, that asthma, that timing and everything, it was the same time that my paternal grandmother had also died, and because of her we had a lot of frustrating environment in our house, so the timing, the synchronicity, the alignment of these, my friend dying, my grandma dying within like 2 days apart, and then me getting the asthma, it was all bringing out this trauma, these unhealed childhood issues, and it was coming out at a time that I was equipped, spiritually equipped to handle it. Doctors told me I was predisposed to asthma, but all these years I lived in so many countries, I never got it. But only when I went back to Calcutta, I got it. So it could be something in the environment. Also, all these childhood traumas were coming out. So I had to face them. I couldn't escape my shadows anymore. So I started bringing my shadows to light. And then I left Calcutta because I realized it was not a place for me to stay, but I was still sick, so I went to live in different states of India for short intervals. And during that time I wrote 2 books. So one is this book Nrit, which I drafted in the hospital, and then I wrote the full book afterwards, which is about the dream of finding the self. Nrit is a Sanskrit word for dance. And the second book is called Life is Abracadabra. And abracadabra is a Hebrew word which means I shall create with my word. So it's something like magic, And Life is Abracadabra, it has 21 magical stories from my travels across the world that will make anyone look at life with new eyes. So it highlights these magical moments in my life, those life-defining moments where, I was either cornered by life into a dangerous situation, and then how something magical happened to bring me out of that situation unscratched. So this book is about faith and miracle and love and healing and magic. So the book will be out very soon, both the books, hopefully this year. And if you stay tuned to my channels, I will announce the publication of the books. I'm, right now working towards their publication. So I spent those 2 years in India writing these books. And then, I got invited to do some TEDx talks across different cities in India. And then also I left India eventually, came back to Costa Rica, went to US, did more events and stuff. So now, back to the present, we are faced with this coronavirus. And the reason I shared this story with you is because I wanted to tell you first how I healed my back, and second how I healed the asthma. It was not just through writing the books where all these inner experiences were coming out, but also physically, I stopped taking the medicines, I stopped taking the inhalers, and I started drinking ginger water. Like I would crush raw ginger, boil it in water and drink that water throughout the day. Take lots of sunlight, because sunlight is a great cure for any respiratory illness, be it asthma, pneumonia, whatever this coronavirus is causing, try to get a lot of sunlight and warmth. And also, if you have a strong asthma attack, respiratory attack, you can take a very concentrated dose of coffee, black coffee, espresso. Take a shot. I don't drink coffee. I think I took that shot only once. I remember I was in this library writing my book when I had an attack, and I went downstairs immediately and I told the receptionist, and she got scared. She called the ambulance, and I didn't want to go to the hospital again or go to and pay all this money again to only meet stupid doctors. So I went to the cafe and I asked the guy working at the cafe to give me a shot of espresso, and he immediately made this shot of espresso. Meanwhile, the receptionist had already called the ambulance and the ambulance was here, but I took the espresso shot and I asked him to give me some ginger, and he crushed some ginger and gave it to me, and I started having the ginger, and the asthma attack kind of subsided. And then they asked me if I would still like to, go to the hospital with the ambulance, and I said no. So I still had these attacks every night. I couldn't sleep, but slowly with time, as I healed internally that trauma, that pain from my ancestral lineage, from my childhood, from my family tree, and at the same time I was, having this ginger water, taking sunlight, laying on the grass, taking the earth's energy, grounding into my body, the asthma got cured naturally. And then I left India, I came back here, I'm fine now. I still don't go to doctors. I just feel that, I've had all these shallow experiences with the medical system that I feel like, I can tune into my own body and find out what is the emotional cause behind something, because every disease is a messenger. I just wanted to share this long story with you for you to realize how powerful we humans are in creating our realities, in healing ourselves, And during this time of world epidemic, I am here to tell you that take your health in your own hands. Whether you are hit by the virus or not, you can resist the virus and its effects by strengthening your immune system, by spending time with yourself, getting to know yourself, getting to know your inner world. Your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your sentiments, this inner world that hurts us, that when that inner world is not at ease is when we get a disease. So we try to fix it externally by taking medicines or going to doctors, distracting ourselves, but those don't eliminate the cause from the root. They are just suppressors. They suppress the symptoms temporarily, and then if you still don't deal with the emotional issues, they can come out later in life. A bigger disease like cancer, or some of those deadlier disease like diabetes, is caused due to suppression of anger, suppression of our emotions. When people lose the sweetness of life, lose the joy of life, they get diabetes, or they are escaping themselves, self-abandonment, overgiving, self-sabotaging, suppressing is what, the body starts producing endorphins, beta endorphins, and in the long run, when your body is high on endorphins, your insulin production goes down, glucose metabolism goes down, and you get type 2 diabetes. So a lot of modern spirituality, that tells you to suppress your anger, suppress your emotions, suppress your feelings, be positive, be happy, be loving, they actually can cause diabetes. This is why a lot of Tibetan Buddhist monks, they get diabetes, and studies have shown that, this Buddhism principle where you say, I love my enemies, you skip the phase of anger and feeling the emotion, and you go direct to loving kindness. You tell in your mind, I love and forgive my enemies, but your body is like, yeah, right, So it doesn't work like that. You have to embody that feeling, you have to embody that anger first. You have to channel it, process it, channel it, release it. And then you can go to loving kindness and forgiveness or whatever, So our lives are not perfect. Society is not perfect. The world is not perfect. And, when we don't deal with the underlying issues and we suppress them, we fall victim to all these diseases. And even now with the coronavirus, of course, they will say it came from animals, rats, bats, snakes, cats, camels, cattle. But we as a collective species, we have become a vibrational match to this disease, which is literally causing suffocation and pneumonia, because the world at large, people are suffocating because of the way life is, and we cannot do what we like. This rat race, this dog eat dog world, that is making us victim to all these illnesses. So this is actually a good time to be here on earth, because a lot of dimensional shifts are happening on the planet. We are ascending in our consciousness. We are moving to different realities, and so everything that is unhealed, unhealthy, unconscious is coming to light, so we can see them. Because if we don't know what is the problem, if we can't see them, then we cannot heal them. Only when you accept it, when you can see it and acknowledge it and accept it, only then you can release it. If you deny it, if you say it's not even there, then it will affect you internally, but you wouldn't even know it is there. So this is why I always tell people that don't distract yourself with that cigarette or with that alcohol smoke or with that show on TV or Netflix, If you are having uncomfortable feelings, stay with yourself. Know yourself, feel that feeling, feel that emotion, and then process it. Sometimes it's just coming out as a childhood hurt or pain, and once you process it, see it for what it is, you can release it, and then it's gone. When the vibration of the disease is gone, your vibration raises, your consciousness rises, the disease has no reason to be there, because you are not a vibrational match to the disease anymore. So I hope you will take care of yourself and stay safe and healthy. Take lots of vitamin C to boost your immune system, so you are not prey to that disease, because it's some kind of a flu, a flu in a more aggravating situation, the coronavirus effects. So just keep your immune system high. Take lots of turmeric and ginger, because they are very good for the respiratory system, And even if you get the virus, you can fight its effects by keeping a strong immune system. So take care and be safe. Namaste.